Hello, friends. Susan Axelrod, the confidence coach here for our monthly conversations about chronic heroism from living with chronic conditions. We come to you monthly to have this important conversation to support people with chronic conditions, but also to edify everyone else. I'm one of those people, although I have suffered from mental health in the past, anxiety and depression, which is, of course, a form of chronic condition. I'm here with my friend Evie Lennon. Hi, Evie.
Hi, how are you, Susan?
I'm great. I want to say thank you, as always, for joining me. Today, we are rocking and rolling. Evie's in St. Louis in a car, but she didn't want to miss this monthly conversation. So thank you for showing up.
Of course, I wouldn't miss it.
Well, this month's conversation is absolutely vital. It's something that you and I have spoken about quite a bit with each other over this time that we've known each other. It's something that I've learned from you, but it's also something that I've learned from so many women in my cohorts, the groups I'm in, my personal family and friends, people with autoimmune disorders, and so much more. And that is on being believed.
Mhm.
Evie, how many women do you know who have told you, as the chronic conditions chaplain that you are, listening to people, supporting them, working with them through these issues? How many women in particular have told you, it took so long for me to get diagnosed?
I wish I could tell you that that was an exception. I wish I could tell you that it was a large majority of people, but unfortunately, I would say if someone has told me that was not the case, I don't remember because most people have taken years to get a diagnosis.
Yeah, that's kind of how we came to the topic for our conversation today because of stories that you were sharing with me about people you know in particular. And again, of course, I'm not going to call out any names, but those people in my cohort, in my Facebook family, on my YouTube family, they know who they are. People who have
Mhm.
shared their own stories with me. It took years. Lyme, lupus, Hashimoto's, the all of these kinds of conditions where fibromyalgia, a huge one. Also, even chronic pain. That's sort of goes undiagnosed. I'm just honestly, what do we want to say about this, Evie? What are your thoughts
Well,
from your experience?
I think a few things come to mind, and one is to practitioners. One message is to doctors. It's so important to be aware of statistics because all of us, there is no us and them. All of us have unconscious biases or bias, and so just even having the knowledge that one example is that women are diagnosed an average of 4 years later than men, even though we go to the doctor more frequently. And it's so important for female doctors and male doctors to check themselves for biases regarding race, any any category, but gender, because that 4 years is a really long time to suffer. And what I would want to say to anybody who's struggling with a condition that is frustrated because they haven't been believed, and even though I literally wrote the book on advocacy, it has still been a really long path in my own life as an advocate for my own family members, both with my daughter and my mom. Um, this background does not make me immune to needing to be tenacious. And
Mhm.
I would just say it only takes one doctor. It just takes one person. So believing in yourself, so that if you feel that you need a treatment plan outside of yourself, which sometimes we do,
Yeah.
uh, just keep going, even though it isn't fun.
Yeah. So yesterday I spoke with Thomas Petty, who calls himself the psoriasis warrior. And psoriasis, most people know, is a skin condition. Uh,
Hmm.
and he went decades of his life, Evie. Obviously, he's a man, not a woman, but
Right.
he went decades of his life uh, dealing with this condition before he began to learn about how the gut biome and nutrition could impact it.
Hmm.
So we're learning from you today that one practitioner could make a difference. One practitioner, one. It may be a helping professional. Maybe it's not a medical professional,
Right.
but if a therapist, a social worker, a coach, a mental health counselor, or of course, a medical professional believes you, then what happens is you feel heard and you feel believed. Now we're in my territory of the confidence zone, Evie. Is it true that lack of confidence or eroding confidence, personal confidence, comes from not being feeling heard or believed in
You know,
about chronic conditions?
if we are a product of our thoughts, then we're certainly a product of our auditory diet and the messages that we get. And it also, I would say, in terms of confidence and the ripple effect that has in our lives, as I've certainly experienced with you, it just takes one person to see you,
Mm,
to see a potential, um, to see the you in you, to turn things around. Because all of us want to give up, not just at the doctor's office, but sometimes in our professional pursuits. Um, and it, it's important too to just remind ourselves that people often have really huge failures before things turn around. I was
mm.
just listening to Steve Harvey talk about how he was down to his last $35 when he was invited to the Apollo Theater. Um, and the playwright, of course, Tyler Perry, was homeless before he had his success. And so,
Well,
but
Tyler
we,
Perry is more than a playwright. He's a billionaire media mogul now. But yes,
yeah,
in
mogul.
fact, he was once an abused boy who was homeless. Yes, exactly. So true. Um, Something's coming up for me. I don't even know what to say, how important this is. You and I are coming together freely, just having this conversation monthly, Evie,
Mhm.
because you have such a deep, intense personal experience, and because I have my own experience, and I
Yes.
know the power of voice and listening. And
Mm,
seeing people and giving people voice and platform. And I feel some energy out there of people who will be watching this via YouTube or listening to this at some point. And I want to speak directly to them. I've learned from you. You just said it again that it could take years, up to 4 years, for someone to believe you, to see you, to validate your what it is that you're suffering. The way that you're suffering. And so we are here today coming together, creating energy and loving support for them, aren't we, Evie?
yeah. Yes. And the fact that I'm in a 1987 Toyota Corolla for this broadcast is sadly living proof that sometimes it is a 4 year or more journey, because my mom has been trying. I've been trying to get her some help for 4 years. And
Mm.
so I'm here because things, reached a point where luckily we are getting the care and evaluation that we need. Um, but, I think, um, this is a totally different example. I mean, who knows what's going on with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but you know, I think part of your value of a voice, Susan, is because you know what it's like to be, from people that you talk to, perhaps from your own life,
Hmm.
what it feels like to have our voice suppressed. I mean, it's maybe one of the worst things that can happen to a person. We can't heal from, if we can't speak about it, we can't heal from it.
Mm. The other thing is this, that sometimes, you know how I feel about the word try, Evie. We try and try and try and try. I'm making air quotes here. We try and try and try, and then we fail, fail, fail. And of course, I don't try anything. I do things. Sometimes I succeed, and sometimes I fail.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to voicing out the pain, the irritation, the difficulties, the strangeness, the brain fog, the stomach problems, the decreasing capacity that we suffer from having the types of autoimmune conditions, and certainly from ongoing extreme mental health disability. Your mother, I don't know what the other issues are, but certainly she's a senior, and that,
Mm-hmm.
even that is a form of chronic condition.
Yeah.
Normally, naturally, according to our genetics, we age. 100% of people will begin to lose their hearing, will begin to lose their eyesight, will begin to have less of a capacity. And so we're here today to say, we see you, we hear you, and we want to encourage you. Evie, what are the words? Sometimes you help me with words. Is
You
it
know,
mhm.
oh no, finish your thought.
Is it we want to encourage you to keep speaking? We want to encourage you to keep seeking. What is it?
I think the first step uh, is getting clear about what you are seeking. Sometimes we know we hunger and we ache for somebody to say certain words to us, and we don't even know sometimes what they are. And one thing I think is helpful before we interact with someone else is to imagine what we would love to hear. What's the letter we wish we received? And, I do believe that being playful can be an avenue to get in touch with that. I mean, even having a puppet show where, people say, don't put words in my mouth. Sometimes we want to put words in people's mouth, you know, and a really powerful um, exercise is to write the letter that you wish you could receive from someone. It's really poignant, and also to think about, what do I think, what is the response communicating to me. For myself it was that I wasn't worth saving. um, we all take different messages that we don't even know we take from these repeated dismissals, and dismissive energy um, is powerful, but
Mm.
because it seems neutral, we don't realize how traumatizing it is.
Mm. So I wrote down that Evie is the queen of being playful and using play and fun to uncover, to support, and to help. So I've experienced that myself. If you read Evie's book, Drawing Comfort for Chronic Conditions, it will be so much fun for you, but it's so edifying and supportive and so important. And then I love that we're giving a useful tool here. Write the letter to yourself that you wish you would receive from someone else about your chronic condition. Write the letter to yourself. Believe yourself. Even that is an interesting thing, because even when it takes month after month after month, year after year to be heard, then does it happen in your experience, uh, uh, as the chaplain you are in this area, that sometimes we stop believing ourselves, or is
Well,
that a thing?
Oh, sure. I mean, I recently heard the term maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, medical gaslighting, and I thought, wow, that's perfect. Uh, because you do, I think it affects your, I can't even complete the sentence, but it affects your self-care
Mm,
because you think, okay, maybe I can power through this. And it's a really subtle distinction to make between that our thoughts create our reality, but sometimes we're in the process of healing, uh, validating ourselves. Um, we don't know why we're on a journey. Sometimes it may be a soul agreement that is the result of 4 lifetimes, so we can't ever oversimplify why we're in a position. But, there's been times that I have, and I know many people push themselves beyond their limit because someone else says you can do that. And so we dishonor our own knowing.
mm.
Um, and you are a person that's taught me a lot about that inner knowing and honoring that intuition of this is going to be bad for me today, or this is going to be life-giving for me, or I'm not being true to myself. Um, and so,
Instead of pushing myself through it, pushing myself through the pain, pushing myself through the sadness, pushing myself through the difficulty. I mean, it really in the former paradigm, we call it the new earth, the new way of being, where we invoke divine energy, which is total nurturing love. Because
mm,
if there's one thing I've personally watched, it's you, though you have significant challenges yourself and with the people who are the closest to you, what can still be accomplished when you believe yourself and trust yourself and listen to yourself and your body. You used the term or auditory diet. And again, I wrote, what are the messages we hear and what do we believe? The auditory diet comes first from what you're feeding yourself, Evie.
mhm,
But
yeah,
there's this catch 22. It's a cycle, it's a looping of, something about telling yourself, maybe, I don't know what you should be able to do. And in the paradigm of the masculine energy, push through it, that kind of thing, right?
right. Um, I don't know. What would you say? How does a person break through that should? I'm loving, by the way, that I think we're our most authentic when we repeat words. And 3 times today, you've done that. Like you're like, push, push, push. And I'm trying to remember earlier in this broadcast, you repeated things several times. And I think that, we step into our child and it's like something's good, good, good. Or there's something really true when we repeat a word. It
That's
just is.
funny. It's I don't know, I thought maybe it's like an affect that I use. Isn't that funny? Here it just happened. As a professional speaker and podcaster, uh, I have some self-critic about how I repeat words, but here you
Oh,
are,
oh
turning that
no.
around. Yeah.
I think it's terrific. When I was an art teacher and my students at the Arts Magnet School, they were competing on a national level. And, both of us can be articulate and eloquent if we need to come up with adjectives. But when I was really struck by a student's piece, I would be like, that's good, good, good,
Yeah.
And it's just something I observed that, and I would say, I know this doesn't sound like a compliment, but when I am stunned to the point that I can only repeat a word, that I know that you've done something moving.
Mm, interesting. Well, we can pull this in to the words that we tell ourselves if we're suffering
Mhm.
from a mental health incapacity or decreasing capacity, as I feel that many people are right now. If we're suffering from chronic pain, we don't know exactly what it's from. Let's pull in, whatever is playful, whatever is effective, whatever works. You asked me a question, Evie. What would you say to someone to break through the shoulds? That's SHOULDS. And I'm not the one who created the expression shoulding on yourself. And that is really, really taking that breath. First, it's coming to conscious awareness that you're even in the should paradigm. I have a transformation tip, as you very well know, which says when you change the words from I have to I want to, you go from resistance to alignment immediately. And so the first thing we want to encourage people to do is come to conscious awareness of the language that they're using. Well, I really should do that. Okay,
Mhm.
well, if you are responsible for tending to your own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health and wellness, then be responsible to that. What are the things that you could do? What are the things that serve you? And how can you speak to these things? How can you speak to yourself? So, whether you use Evie's idea of writing a letter to yourself or my idea of being in more conscious awareness of the things that you say to yourself, we have the opportunity, each and every one of us ourselves, to come to that conscious awareness. Now, Evie, even as I'm saying that out loud, what has come up for me is what you and I have been doing in this monthly conversation. Now, I'm in energy, as you know, but this conversation, the reason you and I are coming together monthly to have this ongoing conversation in 2022, which generated from a podcast conversation we had before, is to acknowledge that the difficulty that so many that people who live with chronic conditions are in. I could feel the energy of the idea of, it's easier to say than to do, Susan.
Um, you know, I don't know. I think that there is something really freeing once, you know that somebody accepts you and that you're seen by that person. I think there's a relaxation that happens, and that defensiveness drops. I think once you're believed, there's nothing to
Mm,
prove.
mm,
Because in fact, I think that the fear that people sometimes have in acknowledging a difficulty is that if I acknowledge this difficulty, then this person may cling to it, or it may strengthen it, or it may fortify it when we want to go in a different direction. But I think the opposite is true. I think because you are so good at acknowledging um, the difficulty of something, then it relieves that pressure of not being believed, and then you're ready to take the next step.
mm.
Um,
That was
I
that was good. That was really good. I hope people will really watch this video on loop and listen to all of this again.
Yeah, and I think we're all afraid, like we don't want people to hurt. Sometimes that, invalidation. I think it's so important that when we are invalidated, to know that, there could be a million reasons that probably have nothing to do with you, has everything to do with the other person. When I was a chaplain, I had to teach myself to check my own anxiety.
Mm,
Uh, a mother taught me a really important lesson about, you know, we want to usher people to a better place. We want to usher someone to a better place because we don't want to see people hurt. And and sometimes we skip the step of just letting the person be where they're at, in that saying, meet people where they are, because we're so scared uh of where that person is. But probably the quickest way to move from that place of utter despair is to be able to voice it, whether
Mm,
it's I'm in a really painful relationship, or uh, I'm realizing, something about my family, or I think that I'm very sick. And this mom that I met, um, you know, I changed details to protect people's identity, but, her son uh, had cancer, had to take chemotherapy, and people were like, oh, isn't it great that there's a treatment? You know, and she said to me, I am horrified that my toddler is going to be taking poison and nobody will let me.
mm,
Nobody will let me be sad.
mm,
And that just, it just, oh, it just grabbed my heart. And so I think you're, really good at that, Susan. I think it's part of your success. You really are able to let people acknowledge that as part of the movement to a better place.
mm.
Um,
Thank you. You know, the energy that you invoke with that story is why you are actually a chaplain, but it's why I refer to you as the chaplain. It's why I called
I'm
you the
always
chronic.
surprised too.
Yeah, it's why I call you the chronic conditions chaplain, because we extrapolate here in our conversation, but honestly, we are speaking directly to people who are living with chronic conditions. Could be said sadness is a chronic condition, but this is really where I wanted, and to everyone else who's listening, I hope that you'll share these conversations. We want people to know how it feels to be in the body of someone with chronic conditions. And if you are watching this or listening to this and you don't think that it's you, it probably is, because we all have mental health. But and by all means, share this with others. I'm calling this out exactly right now because there's so many people, and Evie, you just said it. You said you don't know the energy the other person is bringing to the conversation. You don't know what's behind the other person. You don't know what's under, in the energy under the story of the person you're with. But if you tune in to this conversation that we're having and really become aware, get really clear in understanding what it is like for people to live with chronic conditions and how prolific it is. That's another thing that I learned from reading your book, Evie, Drawing Comfort for Chronic Conditions, is how prolific it is, not just a few people who have, in quotation marks, chronic conditions. And that's one of the reasons that I really wanted us to roll out this ongoing conversation to expose some of this. We just have about one more minute, Evie. I want to thank you so much for showing up, even though you're not in your regular space. And, this is how we do it. This is how we step in, is that we just show up, wherever we are.
I really, it's hard for me not to break out into a song. This is how we do it by Montel Jordan. Um, this is how we do it. Um, yeah, music isn't my gift, but that's okay. Yeah, I think it's, I'm just struck by how important it is, how, you know, the goal of telling our truth, the goal of having a voice when maybe you've had experiences of not being believed. Um, it doesn't change the fact that, in the same way it only takes one doctor. I mean, it starts with ourselves, believing ourselves, but it is also important to have encouragement or to have
Mm,
a confidence coach,
mm,
um, because there is something so liberating in that moment where you tell the truth.
mm,
There's something so beautiful, and I think I kind of fell in love with difficult truths, just in the process of saying goodbye to family members.
mm,
But there's a beauty to those moments of there's just a beauty to it.
Mm,
Um, and I think, we both want for people to have that place of being accepted.
mm.
Um,
Being accepted and accepting what you might consider to be your flawed self,
mm.
accepting yourself no matter what. Oh, this was such a good one. This was such a good one. This was such a good one.
Susan is repeating herself, and I love it. And that's a good sign. I come away from that feeling very good. And
That's fantastic. Where can we find you, Evie? How can people get in touch with you if they want to have a conversation?
I would love it if people reached out on my. I'm on Facebook, Evie Lennon. I'm on Instagram and Facebook also. I have a page called Chronic Valor.
Hmm.
People are free to email me at evielennon779@gmail.com. I would love
Great.
to hear from you.
Good, good. I want to encourage people to go to Chronic Valor on Facebook or Instagram and share your story. We're here to listen
Yes,
and
we would love to hear from you.
yeah,
And
speak your truth. We want to hear it. We believe you. And Evie, good one.
yeah,
Love
you
it.
too. I've enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I'm so glad I hopped in this little Toyota.
Yeah, yeah. And see you next month for our next
I,
conversation.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Take good care. Bye bye.